My fiancé looked me in the eye and said, "You should appreciate that I'm being honest instead of cheating, while still wearing my engagement ring." In that exact moment, the entire relationship snapped into focus. What I thought was love was actually a carefully built manipulation hiding in plain sight. So I told her one sentence, "Then pack a bag." And that was the end of our wedding. My fiance said, "You should appreciate that I'm being honest instead of cheating while wearing my ring." I told her, "Then pack a bag," cancelled our wedding, and sent every receipt to the one woman her soulmate still feared. Monday morning, someone started talking. Wait, I actually had to read that twice to make sure it was real. "You should appreciate that I'm being honest instead of cheating." Just let that phrase, that utter audacity, settle in for a moment. This isn't just a story about a breakup, it's a deep dive into betrayal, self respect, and the slow, agonizing realization that the person you've pledged your future to is an entirely different entity than you ever imagined. We're not just going to read this, we're going to dissect it, piece by agonizing piece, and try to understand how someone arrives at a moment like this. How does life, seemingly perfect, spiral into such a brutal revelation? The incubation before the storm. Our protagonist, let's call them Alex for simplicity, had what most of us would describe as a solid, perhaps even idyllic life before the chaos. Alex had built a career they were proud of, working in a stable, well respected field that offered both intellectual stimulation and a comfortable income. They had a close knit group of friends, a supportive family, and a genuine passion for their hobbies. Whether it was hiking through challenging trails or spending quiet evenings lost in a good book. Life wasn't without its minor bumps, of course, but Alex navigated them with a sense of calm and a positive outlook. They were, by all accounts, a kind, empathetic, and trusting individual. This wasn't someone looking for drama. This was someone looking for companionship, for a partner to share in the quiet joys and inevitable challenges of life. Then she entered the picture. Let's call her Sarah. Alex describes Sarah as initially captivating, vibrant, witty, and possessing an almost magnetic charm. She seemed to fit seamlessly into Alex's world, effortlessly charming their friends and family, expressing interest in Alex's hobbies, and always having just the right thing to say. Their early relationship was a whirlwind of romantic gestures, shared laughter, and what felt like profound connection. Alex recalls feeling a sense of completeness they hadn't known was missing. It was the kind of love story people write novels about, or so it seemed. The engagement itself was a fairy tale moment, planned with meticulous detail, complete with an antique ring that had been a family heirloom. Everything pointed towards a blissful future. Alex felt incredibly lucky, perhaps even a little overwhelmed by how perfectly everything was falling into place. And this, I think, is where we begin to see the subtle undercurrents that can make someone vulnerable to such profound deception. Alex, being an inherently good and trusting person, likely projected their own qualities onto Sarah. They assumed sincerity because they themselves were sincere. This isn't a flaw, it's a testament to their character, but it also creates a blind spot. When you assume the best in people, when you genuinely believe in the goodness of others, you are often slow to recognize manipulative behaviors, especially when they are cloaked in affection and charm. They were, in essence, building their future on a foundation they believed was solid, without truly examining the materials. Alex had always been a fixer, a problem solver, someone who approached challenges with logic and empathy. This tendency, while admirable in many contexts, can become a trap in interpersonal relationships where manipulation is at play. They were primed to look for solutions, to understand, to forgive, rather than to question fundamental character. They wanted to see the best, to believe in the potential. And frankly, who can blame them? We all want to believe in the person we love, especially when they're about to become our spouse. This deep emotional investment, this hopeful vision of the future, can create a powerful psychological pull, making it incredibly difficult to acknowledge inconvenient truths. As our narrative unfolds, keep this initial picture of Alex in mind. A good hearted, earnest individual, deeply invested in their relationships, and perhaps a little too trusting. This normalcy, this desire for a shared happy life, made them an ideal target for someone less scrupulous. But as we're about to see, that was just the tip of the iceberg. The red flags, whispers in the wind. Now, this is where it starts to get weird. The cracks in the fairy tale began subtly, almost imperceptibly at first, like hairline fractures in a perfect facade. Alex remembers 5 or 6 specific incidents that, in retrospect, screamed red flag. But at the time, they were explained away, rationalized, or simply dismissed as minor quirks. The first incident Alex recalls happened during a dinner party at a friend's house. Sarah, usually so poised, made a subtly disparaging comment about Alex's best friend Mark. Alex describes the exchange. We were all laughing about a story Mark told about a bad dating experience, and Sarah just cut in. Well, Mark, it's really no surprise given how you present yourself. You expect too much for someone who's never really put in the effort. Alex remembers the sudden, awkward silence that fell over the table. Mark looked visibly hurt. When Alex confronted Sarah later, her response was dismissive. Oh, come on, Alex. I was just being honest. Mark needs to hear the truth sometimes. You're too soft on him. This brings us to our first psychological deep dive, gaslighting. What Sarah did there wasn't just rude, it was an attempt to undermine Alex's perception of reality and friendship, then invalidate Alex's feelings about it. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation where a person makes someone else doubt their own memory, perception, or sanity by telling Alex they were too soft or that Mark needed to hear the truth. Sarah was subtly twisting the situation, making Alex question their own judgment and empathy. It's insidious because it erodes trust in oneself. Alex, being empathetic, might have even started to wonder if they were too soft, if Sarah was just being brutally honest. This is how gaslighting works. It plants seeds of doubt. A few months later, another incident. Alex was planning a surprise weekend getaway for Sarah, meticulously arranging every detail. Sarah, however, seemed strangely uninterested. When Alex finally revealed the surprise, Sarah's reaction was lukewarm, almost critical. Oh, that's nice, she said. But I told you I really wanted to go to the mountains this year, not the beach. You never listen to what I actually want. Alex felt a pang of confusion. They had carefully considered Sarah's preferences. When Alex gently reminded her of a conversation where Sarah had expressed a love for the specific beach town, Sarah scoffed. No, I definitely didn't say that. You must be misremembering. I hate sandy beaches. I guess I'll make the best of it. This wasn't just a difference of opinion, it was an outright denial of a shared memory, again making Alex question their own recollection. The third flag was financial, and perhaps the most tangible. Alex had always been diligent with their finances, and they expected their future spouse to be similar. Sarah, however, had an increasingly lax attitude towards money. They were saving for the wedding, a substantial expense, and Alex noticed Sarah's personal spending seemed to be accelerating, not slowing down. One evening, while discussing wedding budgets, Alex brought up Sarah's recent shopping spree. Hey babe, I noticed a lot of charges from that boutique on our shared account. We really need to keep an eye on the budget for the wedding, you know. Sarah's response was immediate and sharp. Are you seriously trying to tell me how to spend my money? I work hard. Besides, what's a few dresses when we're talking about our future? You're being cheap, Alex. It makes me feel like you don't trust me. The conversation shut down, leaving Alex feeling like the unreasonable one. This is a classic deflection technique, combined with further gaslighting. Instead of addressing the financial concern, Sarah attacked Alex's character. Cheap, don't trust me. and reframed her spending as a minor issue compared to their future. She shifted the blame, making Alex feel guilty for even raising the point. Then came the subtle undermining of Alex's professional achievements. Alex had just received a significant promotion, something they had worked incredibly hard for. They rushed home, excited to share the news with Sarah. Sarah listened, smiled, and then said, "That's great, honey. So, does this mean you'll have more time to help with the wedding planning? Because honestly, I'm drowning and it feels like I'm doing everything myself." The joy, the celebration evaporated instantly, replaced by a feeling of obligation and guilt. It was never about Alex's success. It was always about how it could serve Sarah's needs or alleviate her perceived burdens. The fifth and final major red flag before the ultimate confrontation involved Sarah's increasingly secretive phone habits. She would often take calls in another room or quickly minimize her screen when Alex entered the room. When Alex gently inquired, Sarah would become defensive. "Are you spying on me? My friends and I are just talking about girl stuff, Alex. It's not your business. You're so insecure sometimes." The accusation of insecurity felt like a twist of the knife, designed to stop Alex from asking further questions. Looking back, these incidents paint a clear picture. The emotional invalidation, the gaslighting, the financial irresponsibility, the lack of genuine support, they were all pieces of a puzzle Alex just couldn't quite see yet. The problem is when you're deeply invested, when you've committed to someone, you tend to view these incidents through rose tinted glasses. You make excuses. You hope they're just having a bad day or that you're misunderstanding. This leads us to our second deep dive, closely related to gaslighting, cognitive dissonance. Alex was experiencing a profound internal conflict. They held two conflicting beliefs. Sarah is the woman I love and trust, my future wife, and Sarah is behaving in ways that are manipulative, selfish, and hurtful. The human mind naturally tries to resolve this dissonance because holding contradictory beliefs is uncomfortable. Often it's easier to change your perception of the evidence. For example, "I must be misremembering. She's just stressed. I'm too sensitive," than to confront the painful reality that your core belief, "Sarah is good," might be wrong. This mental gymnastics kept Alex from seeing the full picture, blinding them to the escalating red flags. Every time Alex rationalized Sarah's behavior, the dissonance was temporarily reduced, allowing the relationship to continue its trajectory. These were not isolated events, they were patterns, slowly chipping away at Alex's self esteem and trust. Yet Alex, still clinging to the ideal of their relationship, kept trying to smooth things over, kept trying to understand, kept trying to fix it. The catalyst, the unveiling. The day the facade shattered wasn't a sudden explosion, but a slow, agonizing unraveling, culminating in that unforgettable, chilling statement. Alex had been feeling increasingly uneasy, a knot of dread tightening in their stomach with each passing week. The wedding was just 2 months away and the stress was palpable. But it wasn't the good kind of pre wedding jitters. It was a deep, unsettling fear that something was fundamentally wrong. Alex describes coming home early from work one Tuesday, intending to surprise Sarah with flowers and a homemade dinner. They wanted to inject some positivity back into their increasingly strained relationship, to remind themselves and Sarah of the love they believed they shared. As Alex quietly entered the apartment, they heard hushed voices coming from their shared office. It wasn't Sarah on the phone, it was Sarah talking to someone in person. The door was slightly ajar, just enough for Alex to hear fragments of the conversation. What Alex heard next stopped them dead in their tracks, the bouquet of lilies slipping slightly in their grasp. Sarah's voice, low and conspiratorial, said, "He's such a pushover, honestly. He believes everything I tell him. It's almost too easy. And the wedding? It's going to be glorious. He's footing the entire bill, of course. And once we're married, well, let's just say our future will be very comfortable indeed." There was a pause, a low chuckle from another voice. Then Sarah continued, "Don't worry, darling, he has no idea. He's too busy being supportive and understanding. He just wants to believe I'm perfect. And as long as he does, I get what I want. Alex felt the blood drain from their face. The flowers hit the floor with a soft thud, a sound that, thankfully, went unnoticed. Every single doubt, every uneasy feeling, every dismissed red flag coalesced into a blinding, horrifying clarity. It wasn't just a misunderstanding or a bad day or Alex being too sensitive. It was intentional. It was calculated. The person they loved, the person they were going to marry, was deliberately manipulating them, seeing them as nothing more than a means to an end. Alex, heart pounding, retreated silently to the living room, trying to process the tsunami of information. The darling part, the cold, calculating tone, the blatant disregard for their feelings, their trust, their financial contributions. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a confession. They sat there, numb, for what felt like an eternity. The silence of the apartment punctuated only by the distant murmur of Sarah's voice. When Sarah finally emerged from the office, alone, a bright, innocent smile plastered on her face, Alex felt a wave of nausea. Honey, you're home early. What a pleasant surprise. I was just catching up on some work emails. She noticed the flowers on the floor. Oh, are those for me? How sweet. She bent down to pick them up, completely oblivious to the earthquake that had just rocked Alex's world. Alex, trying to keep their voice steady, trying to maintain some semblance of composure, simply said, Sarah, who were you just talking to? Smile faltered, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Oh, just a colleague. About work. Nothing important. The lie was obvious, flimsy. Sarah, Alex repeated, their voice trembling now. I heard you. I heard what you said. The air in the room thickened. Sarah's demeanor shifted instantly. The charming facade crumbled, replaced by a defensive, almost sneering look. Her eyes, usually so warm and inviting, now held a cold, predatory glint. This was the moment of truth, the slow motion collision. And then she uttered the words that would forever define their relationship, the words that opened this entire story. Still wearing Alex's engagement ring, glinting mockingly on her finger, she looked Alex dead in the eye and said, You know, you should really appreciate that I'm being honest instead of cheating. Let that sink in for a second. The sheer breathtaking audacity, the twisted logic. She wasn't confessing, she was spinning it. She was trying to frame her manipulative, deceitful behavior as a virtue. It was a final, desperate, and utterly contemptible attempt at gaslighting, an effort to control Alex's perception of reality even as it was undeniably falling apart. Alex describes it as feeling like a physical blow, worse than any punch. It was the absolute annihilation of trust, of love, of the future they had meticulously planned. In that instant, Alex knew there was no going back. The woman standing before them was a stranger, a predator cloaked in the guise of a lover. This was the moment where everything broke. This moment, this chilling declaration, perfectly encapsulates elements of our third deep dive, dark triad personality traits, specifically narcissism and Machiavellianism. Sarah's behavior, the casual deception, the lack of empathy, the self serving manipulation, the arrogant self justification, appreciate my honesty, strongly points to these traits. She was not only aware of her deception but seemed to take pride in her ability to pull it off, framing it as a strategic advantage rather than a moral failing. The utter absence of guilt or remorse, even when confronted, is a hallmark of these darker personality patterns. Alex wasn't just dealing with a flawed human. They were dealing with someone who viewed relationships as transactions and people as tools. The investigation and escalation, a detective's journey. The shock eventually gave way to a cold, hard resolve. Alex, numb but clear headed, looked at Sarah, the ring still glistening on her finger, and uttered the words that would seal their fate. Then pack a bag. There was no anger, no shouting, just a quiet, definitive statement. Get out of my house. The wedding is off. Sarah's reaction was immediate fury. The mask completely dropped. She screamed, she yelled, she accused Alex of being paranoid, controlling, unloving. She tried to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Just a dry, desperate wail of protest. You're throwing everything away over a misunderstanding. You'll regret this. Alex stood firm, unwavering. The moment of clarity had arrived, and there was no turning back. Sarah eventually stormed out, grabbing a hastily packed bag, still spewing venom, still trying to blame Alex for her own exposure. The immediate aftermath was a blur of practicalities and profound emotional pain. Alex cancelled the wedding venue, informed caterers and florists, and started the arduous process of untangling their lives. Each phone call, each cancellation felt like a fresh stab wound. The future they had imagined together, the home they had built, the dreams they had nurtured, all were reduced to dust. But Alex wasn't content to simply lick their wounds. The conversation they had overheard, especially the darling and the casual mention of our future, gnawed at them. Who was this other person? And how deep did this rabbit hole go? The investigative analyst in Alex kicked in. They started with Sarah's phone, which she, in her hurried exit, had left behind. Sifting through it felt like a violation, but Alex reasoned that Sarah had already violated their trust beyond measure. What Alex found was staggering. Texts, call logs, and a trove of emails detailed a meticulously crafted double life. The colleague Sarah was talking to was, in fact, an ex boyfriend, a man named Mark, different from Alex's friend. The conversations revealed an ongoing intimate relationship, not just emotional but physical. More damning, there were explicit discussions about their plan to marry Alex, leverage Alex's financial stability, and then, after a suitable period, divorce Alex, taking a significant settlement, and use those funds to build a life together. Sarah had been planning to essentially commit marital fraud. The level of detail in these messages, the cold calculation, made Alex's stomach churn. This reveals another key psychological dynamic, the idealization devaluation cycle, often seen in relationships with narcissistic individuals. Sarah had initially love bombed Alex, idealizing them to secure their commitment and resources. Now, as the mask slipped, the devaluation was apparent, reducing Alex to a mere financial stepping stone. This cycle is incredibly damaging to victims because the contrast between the initial adoration and the subsequent contempt is disorienting and deeply traumatic. But the most intriguing piece of the puzzle, the part that tied into the title's promise, was an old email chain. It was between Sarah and Mark, discussing their past relationship, their hopes for the future, and a lingering resentment Sarah held for Mark's previous fiancée, a woman named Eleanor. Sarah explicitly stated in one email, Eleanor is the only one who ever truly understood Mark, and he still carries a torch for her, even after all these years. She is the one person he's ever truly feared losing. It drives me insane. This was the one woman her soulmate still feared. A new target emerged, Eleanor. Alex knew what they had to do. The pain was immense, but the anger had solidified into purpose. They meticulously compiled all the evidence, screenshots of Sarah's texts with Mark, copies of the incriminating emails detailing their scheme, bank statements showing Sarah's exorbitant spending, and even a recording taken on Alex's phone after the initial confrontation of Sarah's desperate guilt-free pleas. Every single receipt, every piece of evidence was organized into a concise, damning package. Alex then did something truly extraordinary. They tracked down Eleanor, Mark's ex fiancée. It wasn't hard. Social media is a powerful tool. Alex sent Eleanor a discreet, anonymized message explaining they had sensitive information regarding Mark and his current partner, Sarah, that Eleanor might want to see. After a cautious exchange, Alex provided the compiled evidence. The conversation was brief, the shock on Eleanor's end palpable. Alex didn't ask for anything in return. just wanted the truth to be known. This wasn't about revenge in the petty sense. It was about exposing a calculated betrayal that threatened to ensnare another innocent party. Alex felt a surge of grim satisfaction. The truth, finally, was out of the shadows. This period of active investigation, despite the heartbreak, was crucial for Alex's healing. It allowed them to move from passive victim to active participant in their own liberation. It transformed the narrative from one of personal failure to one of triumphant exposure. The feeling of taking control back, of shedding the role of the manipulated, was empowering. The fallout and resolution, the echoes of truth. The aftermath was swift and devastating, exactly as Alex had intended. Monday morning, someone started talking. That someone was undoubtedly Eleanor. She confronted Mark, armed with irrefutable proof. The dominoes began to fall. Mark, realizing his carefully constructed world was crumbling, tried to deny everything, but the evidence was too overwhelming. Eleanor, clearly heartbroken but also enraged by the blatant deception, exposed Mark and Sarah to their mutual friends and families. The news spread like wildfire. Sarah, already reeling from being kicked out by Alex, found her soulmate, Mark, turning on her. Furious that their scheme had been exposed, furious that Eleanor knew. Their plan to use Alex as a financial stepping stone dissolved into a bitter public argument. The social consequences for Sarah were immediate and severe. Friends, once charmed, now saw her true colors. Her reputation, meticulously crafted, was in tatters. She became an outcast in their shared social circle, viewed with disgust and pity. Her professional life also took a hit. Rumors circulated and opportunities dried up as her character was publicly questioned. The comfortable future she had envisioned evaporated. Legally, Alex had a strong case for fraud given the explicit emails detailing Sarah's intent to marry for financial gain. Alex consulted with a lawyer who confirmed the strength of their position. While Alex initially considered pursuing legal action, the emotional toll of dragging Sarah through court seemed too high. They decided to let the social and emotional fallout be Sarah's primary punishment, preferring to focus on rebuilding their own life rather than continuing to engage with the toxicity. However, the legal threat was made clear to Sarah through her lawyer, ensuring she made no further attempts to contact Alex or demand financial compensation. She essentially disappeared from Alex's life. For Alex, the emotional consequences were profound but also transformative. The initial period was marked by intense grief, not just for the loss of a relationship but for the loss of a future and perhaps most painfully, the loss of their innocence and trust. They went through phases of anger, sadness, and deep self doubt, wondering how they could have been so blind. Therapy became a crucial tool, helping Alex process the betrayal trauma, our final deep dive. Betrayal trauma is a specific type of trauma that occurs when the people or institutions you rely on for survival or well being violate your trust. It's particularly damaging because it shatters your fundamental sense of safety in the world and your ability to trust others. Alex had to learn to trust their own judgment again, to differentiate between genuine connection and calculated manipulation. But slowly, painstakingly, Alex began to heal. The act of confronting Sarah, gathering the evidence, and exposing the truth had been incredibly empowering. It wasn't just about protecting themselves, it was about standing up for their own dignity and ensuring that Sarah's manipulative tactics didn't harm others unchecked. They learned invaluable lessons about vetting character, listening to their gut instincts, and valuing self respect above the fear of being alone. The ultimate resolution for Alex wasn't about revenge, but about liberation. They reclaimed their home, their finances, and most importantly, their peace of mind. The experience, while devastating, ultimately forged a stronger, more discerning individual. They emerged from the wreckage not cynical but cautious, not broken but refined. Alex's story is a stark reminder that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that save us. It's a testament to the fact that even in the face of profound betrayal, clarity, courage, and a little detective work can pave the way for true healing and a stronger, more authentic future. And that, my friends, is a lesson worth learning. If this story hit you even a little, don't scroll away. Hit that like button so more people can see this reality check. Subscribe if you want more real, intense stories like this where nothing is ever as it seems. Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done in that situation. Would you walk away instantly or demand answers first? And share this with someone who needs a reminder that self respect always comes before a relationship.